I bet you don't know why black people, not niggas, celebrate the 4th of July.
The Republican Party in Texas was started on the 4th of July, 1867 in Houston, Texas by 150 blacks and 20 whites.
I bet you didn't know that shit, now did you?
It was that way across the South. The Republican parties were started in the South by African Americans.
Black people was the original Republicans. We started this Republican shit, and this is the motherfucking thanks they get.
In the state of Texas, 2 of our first 3 statewide Republican chairmen were African American.
Well, go on.
The first 42 black legislators elected in Texas were all Republican.
Can I hear more?
The first 112 black legislators elected in Mississippi were all Republican.
You bullshitting.
The first 190 black legislators elected in South Carolina were all Republican.
Is there more?
The first 41 in Georgia, the first 127 in Louisiana. So now you've got all these African Americans really stepping up and starting to gain political standing, political power.
And you know who couldn't take that.
Now, you have Democrats on the other side who have been very racist. It's in their platforms. They support the Dred Scott decision. They think the fugitive slave law is great. They started a nation to keep slavery alive. Very racist.
The party black people support now, the KKK. I meant the Democrats.
And so now they're facing a situation where that these blacks are now their rulers.
You mean to tell me America was never great for blacks? That's not what I heard.
Are now in office, are now U.S. senators, are now U.S. How do you stop that?
In order to put Democrats back in power, you got to take blacks out of power.
1866, Democrats themselves started the Ku Klux Klan.
And black people have been fooled into thinking what the KKK represent. Google it.
Its purpose was not to kill blacks. Its purpose was to take control and return Democrats to power.
Before these niggas get too much power.
Now, if you're looking for a Republican that you want to take care of, you can wipe out any black you want because they're 100% Republicans at that point in time.
That means they're going to kill your ass no matter what color you are, as long as you're a Republican. It's kind of like now, they're going to crucify you no matter what color you are, as long as you're a Republican. Times have not changed. Ain't that a bitch?
You can't wipe out any white. I mean, some whites might be Democrats. You got to be a little more judicious when you're wiping out whites.
When you wipe out somebody white, you got to first find out if they like somebody black.
So what happens is the Ku Klux Klan starts attacking, not blacks, Republican conventions.
Because that's where niggas and nigga lovers will be at.
For example, in New Orleans, in the Republican convention in Louisiana, the Klan joined with the New Orleans police, joined with the New Orleans mayor, Democrats. They attacked physically at the convention in New Orleans, Republican convention. They killed 40 blacks, killed 20 whites, they wounded 150 others.
Damn, white people getting killed side by side with black people by Democrats. Or as you might know them as, the KKK.
1868, they put out a push card in South Carolina, and it listed what they call the radical members of the South Carolina legislature. That push card's about the size of a baseball card. It was put up by the Klan. Klan put it out. It had the pictures of 63 legislators that needed to be wiped out in South Carolina.
Let me guess, Republican legislators.
50 of those legislators were black, 13 were white. Now, they were all 63 Republican.
And on the Democrats' shit list.
On the back of the card, it gave you the name of each legislator so you'd know who you're trying to kill.
We killing all niggas, but these are special niggas.
Congress starts these hearings in this group called the Klan. And they have hearings, and so they bring in Democrat leaders that under oath from these Democrat states said, yes, the Klan belongs to our party.
They snitched on their damn selves.
It's actually in Congress. 1872, the hearings, it's a 13-volume set of hearings in Congress. Unequivocally, Democrats say the Klan is ours and belongs to us. It's there to restore Democrat control in the southern states.
And kill niggas, I meant Republicans, and nigger lovers, I meant white Republicans.
Those guys who lived through it made it very clear. For example, one of the early black congressmen was John Roy Lynch. Another early black congressman was Richard Kane. And they're having to fight the Klan physically for their own safety. They go armed to Congress because of the Klan attacks.
Damn, have things always been this hard for black Republicans?
These guys said if we as blacks would simply stop voting the Republican ticket, if we would agree to vote the straight Democrat ticket, all the violence against us would be stopped.
And niggas told me if I stop telling Donald Trump jokes, they'll stop calling me a coon. Well, I better get me a damn coon shirt. I mean, if I'm gonna be told what to do, especially by the KKK, I meant the Democrats, the people that have been destroying our community our whole life.
Between the 1870s and the beginning of World War I, black pioneers settled more than 100 all-black towns in the West.
Because once upon a time in America, black people own shit, like our own community.
Each with the goal of economic independence.
Sometimes Black Lives Matter don't know nothing. Black Lives Matter really don't know about black history or about what the fuck black people need.
Tell me what the demands are.
We want to control our communities. We want to control our schools. We want to control our economics.
You can control your economics by controlling your own motherfucking business, your own motherfucking jobs, and your own motherfucking destiny.
And we want access. We want equity. I do not believe in equality. We do not fight for equality. Equality is a myth.
We didn't have equality in the 1920s, but what we had is unity in the community.
If we were to go back in time to 1920 and walk up and down Greenwood Avenue, one thing that would probably strike us is the absolute variety of businesses. The numbers are astonishing. 30 restaurants, 45 groceries and meat markets. There were dry goods stores, milliners, photography studio, dental offices. Greenwood is no longer called Greenwood. It's now known as Black Wall Street.
Like Seattle Police Department is no longer Seattle Police Department, it's CHOP.
It's our job as organizers to set forth demands.
Demands? What demands? Demands for some more free shit? When black people had their own community, we had our own money.
This whole idea of self-containment really existed there. The dollar would stay in that community sometimes over 3-5 years before it ever went outside of the community.
It wasn't no dollars going out the black community. Now there's no dollars going in the black community. Thanks, Black Lives Matter.
We plan on creating and advocating for a new existence for black people in this country.
A new existence? I'd rather go back to the old existence. You know, the ones that the Democrats destroyed when we used to police ourselves.
On Tulsa's Black Wall Street, African Americans, including armed veterans, watched nervously and prepared for what might come.
Back then, we really did police ourselves.
Countering this white militancy is very much an African-American spirit of we're going to defend ourselves. If the mob comes, we're not going to run. We've got our guns and we're going to protect ourselves. And that was especially important and valuable and potent in Greenwood.
Being able to defend ourselves against the Democrats or the KKK, the same party that's trying to take our guns now. And the KKK, or the Democrats, as you might know them, set up this race riot so they can wipe out the whole black community.
This white woman is in an elevator, and this black teenager allegedly whistles at her or talks to her. He is taken to jail.
The girl didn't press charges, and he was released.
A mob gathers of whites and blacks, and blacks in Tulsa are armed. They take their Second Amendment rights seriously, and they come with guns.
To protect their own from the Democrats, I mean the KKK.
And this is a threat. Someone fires into the crowd, and the riot is born.
The fake race riot, that was a slaughter.
This was not about the whistling boy in the elevator. This was about blacks becoming too economically powerful.
And the Democrats, I meant the KKK, will never accept a black man having more than them. They not gonna allow it. They're gonna set it off.
There was a whistle that blew, and then the mass invasion and the destruction of Greenwood began.
When the smoke cleared in the early morning of June 1st, 1921, Black Wall Street lay in ruins.
And the Democrats lay in celebration.
This is by far the largest single incident of racial violence in all of American history.
Sponsored by the KKK, or as you might know them, the Democrats. The Democrats didn't want you in government with your own community or have a right to vote.
In 1964,
Incidentally, a year that 3 of our civil rights workers were killed in Mississippi registering blacks to vote.
And the civil rights event, just like then, it took a murder to set it off. Just like the civil rights events of now.
They called it Freedom Summer, 1964, a drive to register blacks long denied the right to vote.
And the civil rights event, just like then, it took some murders to set it off. Ain't that a coincidence?
At a rally, Andrew Goodman heard what would become his fate.
They should expect to spend in jail, and that they should expect possibly somebody to get killed.
Registering blacks to vote. The KKK, the Democrats can allow that, but in order to end racism, you must first have a lesson of unity, but sometimes it takes tragedy to realize it.
They were stopped by the police, accused of speeding. They were put in jail, and they were not allowed to make a phone call, and they were released at night. They got back in the car, and the Ku Klux Klan nabbed them.
You mean the Democrats?
For the latest on the search for the 3 missing boys.
The men's disappearance made national headlines. President Lyndon Johnson ordered federal agents to Mississippi.
I bet he did as a front.
I asked Hoover 2 weeks ago, after talking to the Attorney General, to fill up Mississippi with FBI men and infiltrate everything he could.
You mean the KKK? It's awfully strange how the Democrats all of a sudden threw a search party.
What do they think happened? Think they got killed?
Nigga, stop playing on the phone before I hang up. You know they did.
This morning they had absolutely no trace. There's no sign of the automobile. They have found nobody who's seen the car or the 3 people. So as far as they're concerned, they just disappeared from the face of the earth.
Yeah, that's possible.
Goodman, James Earl Cheney, and Michael Schwerner were murdered, taken by the Ku Klux Klan with the help of a sheriff's deputy, shot at point-blank range, and buried.
As political pawns. Another white person dying side by side with black people for social justice.
President Johnson sent the FBI and was briefed regularly by Director J. Edgar Hoover.
I bet he was.
Apparently what's happened, these men have been killed.
How you know?
Well, now what would make you think they've been killed?
Because we killed them. That's how we know. And now you know what happened. And plus, the Democrats, the KKK, told me the job complete.
Because of the fact that it is the same car that they were in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
You knew if J. Edgar Hoover knew, that nigga LBJ knew too.
It wasn't until August 4th, 1964, that their bodies were found.
Found my ass. The police already knew where they was because the police the ones that helped put them there.
Thousands of law enforcement agents for 44 days were looking for my brother's body and James and Mickey. They dredged out of the swamps 9 black bodies who no one had even heard of.
And probably nobody cared. 1964 was a cold year, just like 2020.
Was also the year that civil rights legislation, historic civil rights legislation, was being promoted.
Or manipulated as a tool.
And President Johnson wanted to sign it, but nevertheless it was held up, bottled up in the United States Senate by Southern Democrats.
Southern Democrats, or should I say the KKK, as they better known as.
But early in Johnson's political career, he was no civil rights activist, casting votes against the legislation.
So you saying LBJ as a Democrat didn't like niggas, but since blacks was given the right to vote, LBJ changed his mind.
So what was the driving force behind this momentous moment?
Tricking blacks into becoming Democrats.
Johnson realized that if he wanted to be president of the United States, he had to have a national base and he had to appeal to people in the North. And the only way he could do that was by basically appealing on an issue of race.
And lying and saying he cared for blacks.
Johnson also reportedly swore like a sailor and occasionally used the N-word.
And that N-word is nigga. Just in case you new to my channel, that's my favorite word, nigga.
Johnson is someone who called his driver the N-word all his life.
That tells you what he think of his driver.
He told him that's the way it's going to be. If you want to get along in this world, you better accept it.
Exactly.
You going to be a nigga whether you like it or not.
So he decides that the 57 Civil Rights Act is going to be the occasion for his doing this.
But I'm going to sign this bill to act like I care. In other words, until we needed black people, we didn't give a shit about black people.
Now, Johnson is someone who, on civil rights issues, voted against the Fair Employment Practice Commission, voted against the anti-lynching bill, voted against abolition of the poll tax.
And was a known racist. He used to call his driver by the first name of nigger.
And it's the first civil rights bill that's been passed since 1875. Now, the problem with the bill is it doesn't do anything.
Because the Supreme Court already said segregation is unconstitutional. So that means LBJ was about 10 years late to the Civil Rights Party.
On May 17, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its landmark decision in the case of Brown versus Board of Education.
Ms. Brown was the first case the Supreme Court ruled for in 1954.
She was forced to travel over an hour to reach the all-black school she was assigned to attend. When she tried to enroll in the closer neighborhood school, which was all white, the request was denied.
Because she was black.
In the U.S. Supreme Court, Brown was represented by NAACP lawyer Thurgood Marshall. He argued that segregated schools were harmful and left black children with feelings of inferiority.
And somebody had to show the difference between white schools and black schools so you can see the discrepancies.
At the height of the Depression, a lawyer named Charles Hamilton Houston set out to expose the inequities of Jim Crow.
And how'd that work?
Charles Hamilton Houston took a camera, went into South Carolina, and did a visual documentation of separate and unequal.
That's kind of like CHOP right now. They separate and unequal. They unequal because the motherfuckers is broke. They got crackheads and everything over there.
With this visual evidence, Houston began building a legal case against Jim Crow, showing just how unequal education was between black and white students in America.
And he had a lot to show.
They would film a black school. Often they'd be in just shacks. I mean, places that had cracks in the walls and children crowded onto benches, no desks. And then he would go to the white school, neighboring white school. 2-story, brick, basketball courts.
And they should have had the basketball court in the black schools. They should have gave the white kids a golf course or a putting range.
And he used it to inform people around the country and to help mobilize black people to fight for their children's future.
And Black Lives Matter right now is fighting for their rights. They're not fighting for our kids' rights. Black Lives Matter hollering about what they want, not what our kids need, like education.
The court unanimously decided in Brown's favor, declaring that separate educational facilities were, without exception, unequal.
And back then, we done it legally.
And yet, symbolically, it is a major break. And that is what allows Johnson to make the segue and transition into being a national political figure.
And LBJ used black people not knowing about the Supreme Court decision to his advantage. Remember, we didn't have internet back then.
And it gives him, to some extent, the legitimacy when he becomes president after Kennedy's assassination to wrap himself in the mantle of civil rights. Yep. And to use this as Kennedy's legacy.
Because it damn sure wasn't his legacy. He was racist, as well as the rest of the KKK. I meant the Democrats.
And President Johnson wanted to sign it, but nevertheless it was held up, bottled up in the United States Senate by Southern Democrats.
The Democrats didn't want to sign the Civil Rights Act?
And one Democrat in particular, who was the last individual to try to obstruct this legislation, was a guy named Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia.
Robert Byrd, the longest running senator in U.S. history.
You can't go to heaven if you hate anybody.
And known racist. Just look at his friends.
It is almost impossible to imagine the United States Senate without Robert Byrd.
Or imagine the KKK without Robert Byrd,
who for 14 hours and 13 minutes held a filibuster against this civil rights legislation.
Because that's what the the Democrats do.
Robert Byrd used the nigger word 3 times on a national televised TV show.
And I used it 100 times in a skit, but I'm black.
We practice that. There are white niggers. I've seen a lot of white niggers in my time when you use that word.
So that makes two of us, because I haven't seen too many white niggas either.
No outcry at all. Nobody said a thing, at least from the Democrat. No, the Black Caucus didn't say anything, the NAACP, no outcry.
Because they both controlled by the Klan.
There's no price to pay when you're on the left and you make intemperate racial remarks. There's no price to pay. We say, well, it's just, we're making much to do about nothing.
Nothing to see here. Please move along. All he done was said nigga a couple of times in public.
Contrast that with the absolute silence of the liberal media.
Just like the Democrats, I meant the KKK, I meant the Democrats control fake news now. That's a damn shame. They had fake news then, just like they got fake news now.
Around Bob Byrd being praised, I mean, a Klansman, a Klan leader, not just a member of the Klan, not just influenced by the Klan, but a operational leader of the Klan.
And nobody said shit. Well, they did, but not about the racist shit.
From my first day in the Senate, I sought out his guidance, and he was always generous with his time and his wisdom.
And the baby eater said he was her role model.
I admired his tireless advocacy for his West Virginia constituents.
And the West Virginia Klan chapter.
As Secretary of State, I continued to rely on his advice and counsel.
And I admire his hate for minorities.
His fierce defense of the Constitution and the traditions of the Senate, and his passion for a government that improves the lives of the people it serves.
White people.
Robert C. Byrd left such a legacy.
So it's pretty safe to say you learn from the best.
They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
Did Robert Byrd teach you that word?
The KKK endorses Hillary Clinton.
Because Hillary Clinton is a member of the KKK, just like Robert Byrd.
They mentioned that he once had a fleeting association with a Ku Klux Klan, and what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means.
He's racist, nigga. That's what it means.
He was a country boy from the hills and hollows of West Virginia. He was trying to get elected.
So he wasn't really racist. He was just playing a racist.
And that's what a good person does.
Playing a racist, not actually being one. He is good at this game.
We have given her $20,000 anonymously for her campaign fund.
And your ass ain't getting their dollar back either.
She is friends with the Klan.
And enemies with the blacks. But the blacks don't see it. The devil's biggest trick is tricking the world into believing that he don't exist. Or she don't exist.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that. What, all this stuff she's saying now, she's saying so she can get into office.
Because white people know she the Klan because she don't give a fuck about minorities.
Okay? She doesn't care about the illegal immigrants. She doesn't.
Her and the KKK, I meant the Democrats.
She's acting like she does so she can get into office.
Where she can pass racist laws. Luckily, she didn't win. And thank God for that.
And once she's into the office, then she'll implement her policies.
Or the KKK policies.
She's Democrat. The Klan has always been a Democratic organization.
I don't remember when the Klan stopped being a Democratic organization because the Klan, I mean the Democrats and the Klan is still killing niggas today.
I could care less about Donald Trump. He's a millionaire. He's a businessman. He's not a politician.
And he's not a Klan member either.
He couldn't run this country more than he can run a county.
Well, at least not the way the Democrats, I meant the Klan wanted it ran.
The KKK endorses Hillary Clinton.
And Hillary Clinton endorses the KKK.
For the KKK, Hillary Clinton is our choice.
And not Donald Trump. Next! The Democrats always lied to black people about racism. But back in the 60s, they didn't have Donald Trump. They had Barry Goldwater.
What I remember most about the '64 campaign was the '64 Civil Rights Act.
My dad had been a Republican all his life. And in '64, he switched.
Along with the rest of the blacks, he was tricked.
And he voted for Johnson, and he became a Democrat because Goldwater was against the '64 Civil Rights Act.
Which in actuality wasn't shit, because the Supreme Court already passed a ruling in the 1950s that segregation was wrong. And they tried to use Barry Goldwater as an scapegoat for civil rights acts, just like they're trying to use Donald Trump for civil rights acts now. Because Trump was a patriot, just like Barry Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater did not want to run for president of the United States.
Neither did Donald Trump.
The multi-millionaire real estate developer is sounding more like a politician these days than America's most grandiose and controversial builder.
And he's still not sounding like a politician. He's sounding like a nationalist.
What Barry Goldwater did want was to persuade a nation to listen to a message.
So did Donald Trump.
When he disagrees with a matter of policy, he does it in a big way.
He let it be known.
I was tired, and I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country. They laugh at us. Behind our backs, they laugh at us because of our own stupidity.
So Donald Trump got tired of us getting laughed at by other countries, and so did Barry Goldwater. They both wanted to make America great again.
America was drifting away from concepts that had made her the envy of the world.
Barry Goldwater and Donald Trump both knew foreign policies wasn't shit.
Today, he sunk $95,000 into a full-page newspaper ad appearing in many papers criticizing the administration's foreign policy.
They both wanted to keep government out of your business.
A message of limited government.
And we're finally getting the government out of the way so you can do your jobs.
They both wanted citizens to be independent, no matter what color you are.
Of the productivity of a free market economy. Of the value of self-reliant Americans. The worth and responsibility of the individual.
This, in fact, is our new American moment. There has never been a better time to start living the American dream. So to every citizen watching at home tonight, no matter where you've been or where you've come from, this is your time. If you work hard, if you believe in yourself, if you believe in America, then you can dream anything. You can be anything. And together, we can achieve absolutely anything.
But when Republicans preach freedom,
together we are rediscovering the American way. In America, we know that faith and family, not government and bureaucracy, are the center of American life.
The Democrats try to discredit them and say they both crazy.
Thank you.
Go ahead, what we witnessed on the part of the president was a meltdown. Sad to say.
Too simple, too old-fashioned. This guy's a nut, said some critics.
Yeah, critics of the Klan.
The president's fitness for office is something that is being called into question.
And this is why Donald Trump had to run for president. He had to wake America up.
Barry Goldwater did not want to run for president.
But like Donald Trump, he had to.
Rumblings in the Trump camp point as far as the presidency. Could the Manhattan magnate be eyeing the White House, or is he just calling a bluff?
But Trump don't bluff. He's strategic, like Barry Goldwater. But Barry Goldwater was way before his time because nobody gave him a chance, just like Donald Trump. But Trump won.
Well, I think that Senator Goldwater is going to shock a whole lot of people by putting up a better fight than most people expect him to, because white people in America, by and large, are becoming increasingly conservative and also very militantly against the fast pace that they think that our people are pressing them toward. So Goldwater stands a better chance than a whole lot of people think.
And if it wasn't for the KKK, I meant the Democrats tricking blacks, Barry Goldwater would have won. But Barry Goldwater or Donald Trump didn't give a damn about being president. They just knew it was something they had to do.
But if the race was to be made, he'd let the chips fall where they may.
Well, they can presume whatever they want. I have no intention of running for president, but I'd like the point to get across.
And since he became president, he have another part to get across.
See, the bottom line is, I know you like me, and this room is a love fest, I know that, but you have no choice but to vote for me.
Like they should have voted for Barry Goldwater. But I guess America wasn't ready for the truth.
He shoots from the hip, they said. He has the courage of his convictions, said others, and added, I don't agree with him, but I respect his honesty, his candor. And so they voted.
And just like Trump, if Barry Goldwater would have gotten office
and chose a different set of promises,
he probably would have kept his promises too. Like Trump, because we can't make that mistake again and vote for the Klan like we did in the 60s.
Because your 401ks, down the tubes, everything's going to be down the tubes. So whether you love me or hate me, you got to vote for me.
Who in the hell else you going to vote for?
But as years passed and events unfolded, abroad and at home, some have concluded that perhaps Barry Goldwater had indeed offered America something special back in 1964.
A look at a true patriot like Donald Trump.
We are kind of the world's keeper, are we not?
I don't believe we should be.
Me neither, because Donald Trump is the president of the United States, not of the world.
Hungry globalists. You know what a globalist is, right? You know what a globalist is. A globalist is a person that wants the globe to do well, frankly, not caring about our country so much. And you know what? We can't have that.
Joe Biden is a globalist, but Barry Goldwater wasn't.
An integrity that transcends fleeting political issues.
Are we going to be hearing more from Mr. Trump on issues like this as we go along?
I really don't know, Larry. This is an issue that's been bothering me. It's been bothering a lot of people that I know, and I think it's an issue that had to be brought out to the fore. The concept of America financing and paying and losing lives for countries that won't even allow us to use their ships. And these are the countries that in 24 hours they'd be wiped off the face of the earth if it weren't for America. It's ridiculous.
They accuse Barry Goldwater and Donald Trump of loving the country just a little too much.
You know, they have a word. It sort of became old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist. Nationalist. Nothing.
This same president, by viewing the world as little more than precincts and wards, is also turning off lights, lights of leadership, lights of conscience, and lights of honesty, lights of strength, and lights of courage. And these lights need turning on.
Use that word. Use that word.
I'm a nationalist.
The United States is, if it were a corporation, it would be bankrupt. It's losing $200 billion a year. For years now it's been losing that. What right do we have to go out and defend? Why aren't these countries, these wealthy money machines, paying us for the defense of their freedom and their nations? Why aren't they paying us?
They paying us now, including the country where your daddy from, Germany. So your ass is a true nationalist.
You'd put up $600 million for this?
Absolutely, assuming I'm doing well.
Do you have $600 million to
I
spare?
have much more than that.
Write that down and write this down too.
Part of the beauty of me is that I'm very rich.
And got big nuts.
So if I need 600 million, I can put up 600 million myself.
Bitch, next, let's talk more about the Democrats and how they trick black people into becoming Democrats.
Are you concerned perhaps about the Democrats taking advantage of this? After Lyndon Johnson, the biggest faker in the United States, having opposed the Civil Rights Act for all the years of his life, this is the phoniest individual that ever came around. Did you get that?
Kind of sound like Joe Biden now.
Lyndon Johnson, a Southern senator who'd long been ambivalent about civil rights legislation, made big efforts to complete an agenda that Kennedy had not been able to complete.
And we all know why that is. He got Jeffrey Epstein. And just like Donald Trump, the Democrats tried to paint both of them as racist. But the fact is, they both just stuck to the Constitution.
You have said, I believe, that we have no right to tell the southern states what they must do about school integration. I can't understand this statement. Do you mean to say the Supreme Court decision is null and void?
No.
Don't be putting no words in my mouth. I wonder what news channel CNN was back then.
The Supreme Court decision is not necessarily the law of the land. The Constitution still is. They interpreted by that action that it was wrong to have segregation. Now, they didn't spell out what was to be done.
That should be left up to the states. But the Democrats took that statement and called Barry Goldwater racist.
Conservatives did not feel that it was something that the federal government should legislate on.
And took his statement about the Constitution the wrong way.
I will never vote for a public accommodations clause in any civil rights bill because I think it's unconstitutional. I think it tampers with the rights of assembly, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the freedom of property.
That's why Donald Trump is big on judges, to make sure the Constitution is honored.
In my home state, we have very few public places that remain segregated by pointing out to business people that it is morally wrong to practice discrimination, and it's also economically bad. This type of approach, while I know it's time-consuming, it is having its effect, will have its effect, and I think it will achieve what we want.
And that's when black people turn Democrat.
This is the basic disagreement between the Negro community and Senator Goldwater. They don't think he's prejudiced. They don't think he's a racist. I don't think he's a racist. But they can't go along with a man who says we ought to let what's going on in Mississippi be settled by Mississippi.
Ain't that kind of what Donald Trump is asking Seattle to do right now? Let Seattle be settled by the people of Seattle?
And the federal government ought to knit or do something else. This we can't take.
Back then, black people wanted feds in their business. Now, black people want feds out their business because that business concerns Donald Trump.
On the eve of the convention, 40,000 people, half of them Negroes, demonstrate against Goldwater in the largest civil rights demonstration since the March on Washington last summer.
Now it's the marches and the riots after the George Floyd death.
I am compelled to urge Negroes and all people of goodwill to vote against him. His election would be a tragedy and certainly suicidal almost for the nation and the world.
And if you get the king of the civil rights movement to say Barry Goldwater is racist, then you pretty much are fucked. The Democrats knew Martin Luther King was really a Republican. He only voted with LBJ for civil rights. That's why they had to kill him. Because if a Republican like Ronald Reagan would have came along and offered him a better deal, black people probably would have still been Republicans.
You know, nobody knows, or none of us knew, what Senator Goldwater's motives were. We had to take him at his word that this was a constitutional, a philosophical objection. People respected that there could be a difference of opinion, but he was wrong. He was just plain wrong. And because he was wrong, he made his party wrong.
And black people turned Democrats, but you got to ask yourself, was he really wrong? Donald Trump and Goldwater were so much alike they even shared the same opinions about reporters.
Well, I happen to think I'm in a pretty tough race. I'm spending the money that I legally can. That's the answer. In fact, it's a stupid question, if you don't mind my saying so.
Rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
And before there was Judge Kavanaugh, there was Judge O'Connor.
What do you want to talk about, the Air Force or Chile?
Judge O'Connor.
Oh, Sandra O'Connor.
And the news loved Barry Goldwater and Donald Trump because interviewing either one of them, you never know what they might say.
The Reverend Jerry Falwell says that good Christians should be opposed to Sandra O'Connor.
Well, you know what I said about good Christians.
No, what did you say?
How was that again, Senator?
Well, I don't think I can use it on the air, but ass...
Let us be the judge of that.
Ass isn't the dirt. I said all good Christians should kick him in the ass.
I will send to the Senate the nomination of Judge Sandra Day O'Connor of Arizona Court of Appeals for confirmation as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court.
And just like Judge Kavanaugh, the Democrats hated that.
Last night, President Trump took a step that millions of Americans feared he would take and nominated to the Supreme Court someone who would fill his campaign promise to overturn Roe and declare health care for Americans unconstitutional.
And it was all over the same issue, abortion.
The White House has received thousands of letters and telegrams opposing Judge O'Connor's nomination from Right to Life groups.
The Democrats held open protests on both their decisions.
Listen, if you are a young woman in America, or you care about a young woman in America, pay close attention to this nomination. Pay close attention.
I think we need to pay more attention to you.
Because Kavanaugh has made his purpose clear. He told us that when he was on that list of 25. He has told us that in every decision that he has made on the issue of choice. And let's be clear about what this is about. It's about government taking on the decision about a woman and what she does with her body instead of giving that woman and her family and her God the power to make the decision for herself.
Just keep killing black babies, huh?
Considering abortion disproportionately kills black babies in America. And Planned Parenthood's founder is a known racist eugenicist.
She's a Democrat.
During my nomination, there was some criticism from one or two people who weren't too happy about it. Barry Goldwater had been a senator for some years. When my name surfaced, he immediately spoke out in support.
Sound like Donald Trump sticking up for his friends.
Like most things with Barry Goldwater, it was a black or white proposition. He was for you or not.
Like Trump, either you for him or not.
I don't know that I'd go that far. I got the sense my job would be contingent upon how he felt how he felt I conducted myself and whether I demonstrated loyalty.
Like Donald Trump, Barry Goldwater wanted the Republican Party to be loyal.
A nation where all who can will be self-reliant, with government performing only those needed and constitutionally sanctioned tasks which cannot otherwise be performed.
Barry Goldwater and Donald Trump both preach independence.
We see in the sanctity of private property the only durable foundation for constitutional government in a free society.
They both preach freedom.
We Republicans seek a government that attends to its inherent responsibilities of maintaining a stable monetary and fiscal climate, encouraging a free and a competitive economy.
And like Donald Trump, Barry Goldwater talked directly to his party.
And beyond that, we see and cherish diversity of ways, diversity of thoughts, of motives, and accomplishments. We don't seek to live anyone's life for him. We only seek to secure his rights, guarantee him opportunity.
So whoever want to be rich can be rich.
This Republican Party is a party for free men, not for blind followers and not for conformists.
Barry Goldwater is a cold nigga. He not talking to the Democrats, he talking to the Republicans.
Our Republican cause is not to level out the world or make its people conform in computer-regimented sameness. Our Republican cause is to free our people and light the way for liberty throughout the world.
In other words, real niggas and fake bitches.
This party, its good people, and its unquenchable devotion to freedom will not fulfill the purposes of this campaign, which we launch here now, until our cause has won the day, inspired the world, and shown the way to a tomorrow worthy of all our yesteryears.
So I gotta start draining the swamp.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
Because I'm a nationalist.
We're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
I'm a nationalist too.
Violence in our streets, corruption in our highest offices, aimlessness amongst our youth, anxiety among our elders, and there's a virtual despair among the many who look beyond material success for the inner meaning of their lives.
If Barry Goldwater would have gotten office, they would have killed him. Probably like the Democrats want to kill Donald Trump. And some Republicans. Just look at the shit Donald Trump is doing to fuck off the church's money.
It is time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. This is why I'm proposing a package of ethics reforms to make our government honest once again.
And guess who Donald Trump wanted to be honest?
When Bill Clinton, who was right about Obamacare 2 weeks ago, by the way, he said it's crazy, came into office, he signed an executive order saying if you work for the White House or a federal agency, you can't lobby the government for 5 years after you leave. But then President Clinton did what the Clintons always do. He rigged the system on his way out, right? Clinton lifted the executive order so Clinton cronies like John Podesta could start raking in cash.
When you think of Hillary, think of our real slogan. Buy one, get one for...
What? Kids? Ain't that a bitch?
Small men seeking great wealth or power have too often and too long turned even the highest levels of public service into mere personal opportunity.
I honestly think the Republicans through the election, they didn't want Barry Goldwater in. I think they were scared.
We must know the whole good is the product of many single contributions.
That means where we go one, we go all.
And I cherish a day when our children once again will restore as heroes the sort of men and women who, unafraid and undaunted, pursue the truth. Equality, rightly understood, as our founding fathers understood it, leads to liberty and to the emancipation of creative differences.
This speech right here is when the Republicans turned on him.
Wrongly understood, as it has been so tragically in our time, it leads first to conformity and then to despotism.
Barry Goldwater was talking about abuse of power way back then. You think the Democrats can really afford 4 more years of Donald Trump?
So here's what we as a group are announcing tonight. First, I'm going to reinstitute a 5-year ban on all executive branch officials lobbying the government for 5 years after they leave government service.
I know that freedom is not the fruit of every soil. I know that our own freedom was achieved through centuries by unremitting efforts of brave and wise men.
They probably couldn't have took 1 year of Barry Goldwater. Before I go, the Dems have a message for you.
Niggers.
He was a Senate icon. He was a party leader. He was an elder statesman.
Niggers.
Robert Byrd was a deeply religious man.
There are white niggers. I've seen a lot of white niggers in my time. I'm going to use that word.
Barbaric.
Niggers.
Barbaric.
Niggers.
Barbaric.
Niggers.
Barbaric.
White niggers.
Barbaric.
Niggers.
Barbaric.
Niggers.
Barbaric.
Shout out to Edwin Dornsif one more time. I hope I got that right. Also, David Clark, not the sheriff, the one from Canada. Shout out to David Clark on the donation. Also, Raw Monster, LLC. Shout out to Raw Monster in the house for the donation. Michael Fable, happy to be alive. Me too. Also, shout out to Christine Smart, very smart. Andre, what's up, Andre? Michelle in the house. What's up, Michelle? Barbara, how you doing, Barbara? Michael, that's another Mike. Not bad like Mike, bad like Michael Jackson. Heather Fitzgerald, Melissa in the house. Also, last but not least, Robert Walter.